So what exactly is a personal statement? The personal statement is the most important part of a UCAS application and requires you to concisely explain your reasons for choosing to study your subject. It also needs to demonstrate your knowledge and your passion. All universities treat personal statements differently. Some put a lot of weight in them, whilst others rely mainly on academic achievements and/or work experience. Despite this, and as said, it is the most important part of the application, as it requires you to think quite critically about your choices, motivations, and your aspirations. You might start your application thinking you want to study one subject, and over the course of writing your personal statement, you may change your mind, which will result in you making more suitable choices. Ultimately, the personal statement is your opportunity to demonstrate your personality, knowledge, and passion for your chosen subject. And this is especially important for particularly competitive universities and courses where your personal statement can make or break you. It is a difficult part of the process, and you will need to plan your time carefully to make sure you can write a fantastic statement in time for the deadline. This is not something that can be written in 10 minutes before the day before it is due. There are some guidelines you must adhere to when writing your statement. UCAS, which stands for Universities and Colleges Admission Service, is an independent charity and is funded by fees paid by applicants. You have two options. You can make only one course choice to one university. This costs £13. If you make 2 to 5 course choices, the cost is £24. You have the opportunity to write only one personal statement, and this must apply to all of your choices. It is therefore vital that you do not mention any institution by name or mention any facilities that are not available at all of your choices. It is important that you mention what the university can do for you, and writing something broad can be very difficult. We'll come back to this later. You are limited to 4,000 characters or 47 lines, whichever comes first. The characters include all punctuation, letters, spaces, and line breaks. Always write your drafts in a Word document and keep an eye on the character count there, but make sure you preview what you've written in the statement section before you send it. The statement section looks like this. This is the preview button, and if you click it, you'll be told how many characters and lines you've used. If you go over either of these limits, the system will simply cut off any extra characters, and you really don't want that happening. The deadline for UCAS is the 15th of January, and it is the same day in January every year. What is important to remember is that this year's deadline is a Sunday. If you are still at college, your entire application for UCAS needs to be checked by a member of staff, often a careers or progression advisor, before it is officially sent. Please check with your school or college if they'll be checking and sending statements on the 15th, because it is unlikely that they will be. It is a weekend after all. Therefore, I'd recommend that you complete and send your application by Friday the 13th of January. UCAS has plagiarism detection software, and this is flagged to both your school and the universities you apply to. If you take inspiration from your friends or examples of personal statements from the internet, this will be flagged, and it can massively affect your probability of being offered a place. Some universities will instantly reject you. Others might give you a second chance to submit another statement, but your application will be heavily scrutinised. Universities take plagiarism very seriously, both prior to you starting and once you are studying. Let's have a look at some quick tips. So the personal statement is not something you can do in a rush a day before the deadline. Many a student has tried and many a student has failed. It requires careful consideration as you're essentially analysing yourself and the decisions you make. It's important then that you not only give yourself a good amount of time to do it and make drafts, but also give yourself a little bit of time away from it before rereading, amending and sending it off. This lets you see mistakes and inaccuracies you would not normally notice. Think of it as an essay in this respect. Use websites like the National Career Service to research your chosen career or the sector you are interested in, as this will give you a good idea of the training and qualifications you will need to succeed. For example, to be an architect, you'll need a 5-year degree in architecture that is recognised by the Architects Registration Board, as well as 2 years professional experience. It's therefore not a decision to be taken lightly, and if this is a career you are considering, but you're not sure if you can commit that much time to, it may be worth reconsidering your career options. The statement needs to start clearly and with high impact, and the whole thing needs to reflect your personality. 700,000 students applied to university through UCAS by the January deadline in 2016. This does not include those who applied late or through clearing. I think this puts into perspective the importance of making a statement that stands out. Dedicate a large chunk of the statement to the subject area you are applying to study in and your knowledge of not only the subject but also the sector once you graduate. Your passion needs to shine through, and you can do this by articulating your knowledge and referencing projects or modules you studied which have confirmed your desire to study the subject. This is especially important for those of you applying to competitive universities and courses, but also to art students who need to discuss their influences and inspirations. Write a little about your career aspirations. What do you currently want to do with your life? This doesn't even need to be particularly specific. Just make sure you articulate a knowledge of the sector. We understand that at this application stage, some students know exactly what they want to do with their lives, but some only know the industry they want to work in, but not necessarily the job. This is fine. Just make sure you can talk about the options that will be made available to you by studying at university. Do remember that if you do have any questions throughout this, Bhavini is sat here ready to answer your questions. So what exactly are the lecturers and admissions staff looking for? These are quotes taken from the UCAS website, where you'll find many other comments from admissions staff members at various universities. This is worth having a look at in case an admissions officer from one of your chosen universities has given some tips. So Amy Smith from Nottingham Trent University says that you need to remember to you have a lot to offer. You just have to write about yourself in a positive way and sell all the skills and experience that you have. It's imperative that you're positive about yourself and your choices. Even if you've done poorly in some modules of your qualifications, or you're applying for a course completely different to your current course, it's important that you're not negative about the decisions you've made. Focus on the skills and the experience you've gained so far and talk about them in relevance to your chosen course. Emily Bell from the University of Liverpool says, do not mention a specific university. Unless you reveal otherwise, we will think that you really only want to come to us. Do your research though, and if you find facilities and schemes that are offered at all of your choices, then talk about them. For example, if all of your choices have Erasmus schemes and you are interested in this, then mention it and explain how it will benefit you. A mistake a lot of students make is not talking about how they will use the facilities and opportunities available at universities. Doing this will show you've done your research. Enthusiasm, motivation, and focus about the subject you're applying to. That's Maxine Charlton from the University of York. So enthusiasm for a subject is incredibly important, and you must get this across to the reader. We are also interested in understanding a student's motivation for their decision to study their subject, so make sure you get this across too. Please don't say you've wanted to study a subject all of your life or since you were young. This comes across as a bit wishy-washy and contrived. Dr. Rosanna Cross from University of Bristol says, everything in your personal statement should aim to show that you have the skills and qualities we are looking for and convince us to offer you a place on the programme. If it doesn't do this, then leave it out. Whilst it is good to mention work experience, only talk about any skills you've gained that are relevant for the course. For example, working in a shop provides you with strong communication skills that will benefit you in a business management course. Volunteering in a school may have provided you with problem-solving skills that will help you in a graphics degree. Always make your experience relevant, and if it isn't, take it out. Also, do not just say you are a competent person or a dedicated worker or a competent individual without using examples to back your comments up. So, actually writing the statement. Do the research. Prior to writing your personal statement and making your 5 choices, you really do need to do some research. Use the UCAS course finder to find the perfect course. You may want to do quite a general degree, and that is fine, but playing around with the finder, which has over 37,000 courses listed, may result in you finding a more specific course that's perfect for you. Find out the specifics for each of your course choices. If you are doing a BTEC course, you need to make sure your university accepts your qualification for entry, because some do not. Are you realistically going to achieve the minimum entry requirements? Are you going to have to study further to achieve your career goals? And what is the progression route? Some courses at some institutions are accredited. For example, at the University of West London, the LLB law course is accredited by the National Association of Licensed Paralegals, where our criminology with law degree is not. This may affect not only your choices, but also your career prospects. Perhaps most importantly, find out what partnerships with businesses institutions have and how they can support you with work experience whilst you're studying. It is vital that you visit campuses, ideally before you make your choices. If you do not do this prior to sending your application, try and visit universities when you begin making your insurance and firm choices. A university may look perfect on paper, but you don't know if this is the case until you see the campus, experience the location, speak to the lecturers and see facilities. Lastly, try and find out what additional funding may be available to you. With the rising cost of fees, accommodation and general living expenses, a scholarship or bursary can be incredibly beneficial. For example, at the University of West London, we offer a £2,000 scholarship for students enrolling onto a foundation year course. This is not a means tested award, and therefore all foundation year students are eligible, but you may find that a lot of bursaries or scholarships at other institutions are. Scholarships are commonly awarded for academic excellence, and bursaries are generally offered on a financial needs basis. Check and see what's available to you, as this can massively affect your overall university experience. So let's have a look at some things to include and some things to avoid. Prior to writing your personal statement and making your, despite personal statements being incredibly subjective, there are some key things you definitely need to include. Be as specific as possible about the areas of the course that interest you. This can be difficult if you are applying for slightly different courses. For example, if you're applying to 2 business management courses and 3 event management courses. They're similar, but they're different enough so that you're not able to be too specific. It's important, therefore, that you do your research, have a look at what you'll be learning by reading the module lists, and hone in on anything similar across the courses. Don't force this, though. You have to be honest about what actually interests you. As mentioned previously, work and voluntary experience is really great to talk about as long as you make it relevant. Throwing in buzzwords about your work ethic and personality is only worth doing if you can back them up with examples. This is exactly what you would do if you were writing a cover letter for a job application. Always demonstrate your skills. Just saying you're a good problem solver without giving us an example of when you used your problem solving skills is not going to cut the mustard. Again, as mentioned previously, you need to tell us about your career goals or current plans for your future, so you're demonstrating your knowledge of the sector. Please do tell us of any personal experience that may have influenced your decisions, if you're willing and comfortable enough to disclose them. This could be watching family members exceed in an entrepreneurial context, which has sparked an interest in business, or experiencing a piece of technology which has inspired you to be an engineer. This is very subjective, but also very revealing about your personality and you as a person, which makes the personal statement much more interesting. Lastly, tell us about authors, practitioners, or professionals who have inspired you and who interest you. Please do not make this cliche. We see a lot of references to Steve Jobs and Richard Branson in business applications and Coco Chanel in fashion statements, so try not to use people who are particularly obvious. This is especially important for art students. We want to hear about people who influence the work you make and the way you think when making art, whether that be music, graphic design or fashion, and how your ideas develop. Regardless of the course you applied for, if you are invited to interview, be prepared to talk about this. Most importantly, perhaps, things to avoid. Keep your language simple and to the point. Avoid overusing the thesaurus feature in Word, as the statement can end up not making much sense or feel clunky. This is especially problematic if the words aren't actually synonyms and end up with the writing not making any sense at all. If you feel you are overusing phrases like interest in, then you need to reword your sentences. If you wouldn't say something in a day-to-day discussion, then don't say it in your statement. Despite this, you must avoid informal language and any abbreviations. For example, don't write e.g. for example. Write the words. In addition to this, you avoid using words like passionate, fascinating, or desire. They're overused and a bit contrived. As mentioned, there is plagiarism detection software that picks up on all plagiarism and flags this to the institutions you're applying to. This is not a risk worth taking, and just because you found a personal statement on the internet for reference, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good statement at all. Do not trust the spell checker in Word document. Have someone you know and trust check all grammar and spelling. Your school or college may have drop-in English support, so utilise that if you can. Your careers or progression advisor at your college can check your personal statement, but they are reading the content, not correcting the grammar and spelling. Please do not exaggerate your achievements and knowledge. If you are invited to interview and you are unable to elaborate on something you've written about, it could jeopardise your being offered a place. Aside from this, it's a bit dishonest and you'd be doing yourself a disfavour. Try to avoid using quotations. It's your voice the universities want to hear, not Coco Chanel's or David Attenborough's. If you feel you must use a quote, think of it as an essay in that you need to expand on it and discuss it in context. Beginning your application with a random quote by Einstein about the value of education or something equally cliche is an absolute no-no, and I discourage it immensely. Lastly, try to avoid jokes and comedy. Humour is too subjective, and whilst it can be effective with some universities, it could be detrimental with others. As you are applying to several institutions, it is best to avoid this entirely. Structuring the statement. It's maybe easier to structure your statement into 4 to 5 sections. Consider the following for when you write your statement, and it may make things a little easier. This is by no means the perfect way to set out a personal statement, but it may be helpful if you're struggling to structure yours. Start strong with your opening sentence. No, I've wanted to study since I was young, or I have been always interested in, please. These are astoundingly overused phrases, and they do not make you stand out at all. Drawing on a personal experience is nice, as is referencing something you may have read or seen that helped you specialise. The opening is hard, and no one would deny that, so it's maybe worth leaving it right to the end. You may become inspired as you write the rest of your statement. Explain the reasons for your choice at the beginning whilst making it clear that you have a knowledge of the subject. Avoid anything that sounds like you're explaining what something is. The lecturers who may read this are practitioners or specialists who have vast experience in the field, and they don't need a dictionary definition of marketing or being told what a nurse does. They already know. Move on to why you are suitable for the course, possibly referencing modules or projects you've done that you particularly enjoyed and may have informed your choice. As mentioned previously, if you can find similarities in your choices, modules, facilities or similar, then mention them here and how they will help you progress and succeed. As mentioned several times, follow this up with your career aspirations and knowledge of the sector. We've discussed this in detail already, so I won't elaborate further, but please understand that it is very important that you talk about your future goals. Lastly, we want to know what you're like as a person, not just academically. Tell us what you do outside of the classroom, but please make it interesting. I enjoy spending time with my friends is not interesting in the slightest. I enjoy going to museums and exploring culture is a bit more intriguing, but do elaborate on it. This section does not need to be extensive and should not take up more than a few lines. If you contribute to your wider community via volunteer work or something similar, do tell us about it. Your conclusion, similar to an essay, needs to relate to your introduction. This is why it's worth leaving the beginning to the end so you can relate them back to each other. Keep the ending short though. It's everything that came before it that's more important. Don't let your personal statement fizzle out with something weak, So do make an effort with it. So after all that, these are some of the main things to bear in mind whilst writing your personal statement. Make your statement relevant to all of your choices. Do not mention any institution by name or mention facilities some of your choices do not have. Please do not leave this to the last minute. If you have yet to start your statement, I recommend starting it this side of Christmas, which gives you roughly 3 to 4 weeks before the deadline to create a couple of drafts. A weak statement will likely result in you not receiving any offers. Ultimately, this is your future, and not putting any effort into it is going to affect you more than it will affect anybody else. You will be one of over 700,000 applicants. You need to stand out amongst them. Really make sure the course you are applying for is right for you, and if it is, you're going to have to be able to write with passion and knowledge. Please visit campuses. As said, if you do not do this or have not done this prior to applying, please do it once you are making your firm and insurance choices. A visit to a campus can be incredibly illuminating, and you'll be able to tell straight away if an institution is more likely to be for you just by being there and talking to students and staff. You would not buy a house without first seeing the house. This degree is going to cost you a lot of money, and you need to make sure what you're signing up for is exactly what you think it is. Ultimately, the personal statement is just that. It's personal. It's all about you, and whilst a lot of people find it difficult to be positive about themselves and their achievements, you must cast your modesty aside and paint the best possible picture of you. While there will likely be hundreds of applicants with the same grades as you, they aren't the same person. You have experiences, passions, and thoughts that make you distinct, and that's what we want to see. Focus on your strengths and your enthusiasm, and you'll be absolutely fine. Thank you very much for watching this webinar. I hope it will have given you some help if you're having problems starting or continuing with your statement. Vivini and I will answer any questions you have via the chat over the next 5 or 10 minutes. Again, I hope this has been helpful, and I wish you the best of luck with your applications, but also in any interviews you may have. I also wish you luck with your exams and coursework over the next few months. Have a good winter break and good luck.